Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Russ Clark. I'm the Business Development Manager at BTRG. Before we proceed with the presentation, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Please note that all attendees are in listen-only mode. If you wish to ask a question, please use the question box located near the bottom of the control panel. And at the end, we will compile those questions and send them out in an email in the coming days. Today's session is being recorded. By early next week, you should receive a follow-up email with a link to the webinar replay, and you can always find the replays on our website. To get things started, I'd like to introduce our two hosts for today's presentation, our Director of HCM Solutions, Janet Martin, and HCM Consultant, Courtney Smith. They have a lot of great content for you today, so without any further delay, I'll turn things over to Courtney and Janet. Go ahead, guys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Smith, and I'll be your presenter for the majority of the presentation today. So I'm going to get things started and show you our agenda. So first, I'm going to give you an overview of Oracle's Talent Management Cloud Suite, and then I'll go into an intro and demo of goal management. So specifically, we'll go over managing profile options, creating goal plans, adding organization goals and worker goals, and then a short demo. Then we'll go into performance management and how you align your goals with the performance evaluations, how you set up performance documents and templates, what the end user experience looks like, and finally we'll end with a demo of some of the setup. Again, if you have any questions throughout, put them in the question box. We'll be sure to follow up with them after the webinar. So what exactly does Oracle's Talent Management Cloud service include? So there are 7 key areas that it covers. And really a big benefit about this system is that all of these areas integrate and work together. So it's really a complete solution for your talent management needs. So starting at the top, profile management, that's where you manage the talent profiles of your workforce. To the right, we have talent review. That's where you conduct meetings to assess the strengths and weaknesses of your workers. Then you have recruiting and onboarding, finding and hiring the best talent. Learn includes creating learning plans for career development. Succession management, that's where you develop succession plans to replace any key personnel that you have. And then the last 2 areas are the one we'll focus on today during the webinar, goal management and performance management. I'm sure we'll have more webinars in the future around the other areas, so be on the lookout for invites to those as well. So first, let's talk about goal management and what really the key benefits are for using it. Goal management allows you to track and manage both individual and organizational goals, and they align them with your overall company strategy. As most of you kind of know, goals are easy to set. What we really see our clients struggle with is how to track those goals and make sure that progress is constantly being made. With this system, your executives will have clear insight into that progress, and workers' goals can be set in the context of the overall team and organization goals. The goals are then tied to performance documents, so that really empowers your workers to work hard and achieve their goals. Finally, goal sharing allows colleagues to collaborate on goals and work together. So those are just some of the key benefits we see when using goal management. So how do you set up goal management in HCM Cloud? There are 4 basic steps that need to be done in order to set it up. I'll just go over these quickly. There's more detail in later slides, so that's why I'm going to go over them pretty quick to begin with. So first, you would set options to specify the features you'd like to use. Next, you would then add goals to a goal library. And the goal library is kind of a central place where your users could get pre-populated goals to use, and your HR specialist adds them in advance. You'll also need to add a review period, since in HCM Cloud, all goals need to be organized around business cycles. Step 3, you would manage your goal plans, which can be assigned to individuals, a selected group, a general population. Finally, you would manage the goal eligibility profile. And this is where you really define the criteria for who should qualify for what performance goals, and that's based on their profile information. It's pretty simple to set up. So let's go into more detail around the profile options within the system. Oracle allows a lot of flexibility when it comes to what features you want to configure. You can determine to enable or disable certain features like sharing goals, having a manager approve goals, adding tasks to your goals, and so on. There's a lot of different options. And then this screenshot's just an example of some of the options. There's a scroll bar, but obviously we couldn't get the whole screen in this picture. This just shows a couple of the different profile options you have. So let's take one specific example on the next slide. So here's the profile option code: HRG, add, goal, rec, approve. I know that means nothing to you at the top, but this is actually, if you look at the display name, the option code for requiring manager approval when a worker adds a goal. So the display name will always give you a complete description so you know what you're looking at. In the system, this profile value defaults to N, where the arrow is pointed. As you see here, though, I've changed it to Y. So because I've changed it to Y, it's now going to require approval when a worker adds a goal. The manager is going to have to approve that. All you have to do is click Save, and there you're done. You've now configured the system to allow approvals to happen when a worker adds goals. So if you remember that list, all you would do is go through the different options and decide how your company would want to use these different features. Very easy to do. So now that we've talked a little bit about setting up your options, let's go a little deeper into goal plans. So goal plans are meant to kind of group goals with common characteristics, and this allows your goals to be tracked for a specific population in a specific time period. You can choose to include your goal plans in performance documents, or you can control who has access to updating them. It's important to remember here, though, that goals can only be assigned to one goal plan at a time. So that's important to remember throughout when you're adding goals. The HR specialist is actually the one who adds goal plans in the system. So most of the time they assign goal plans based on organization assignment. Oracle uses the term organization owner to refer to what we would call a department or a line manager. So that's maybe something that you have to remember when you're structuring this. At BTRG, we actually use HCM Cloud internally to manage our teams. So in this example, maybe our HR specialist would create a goal plan and assign it to, let's say, Janet, and she's the HCM team organization owner. So all our HR specialists do, log in, create the plan, assign it under the organization assignment, and bam, Janet has a goal plan for her team. Later I'll show you exactly how to create a goal plan when I demo the system. So after the HR specialist assigns a goal plan, the organization owner then can log in and add organization goals that support their group. Like I said before, organization owners are all line managers by default. So if you or your company think that you want to restrict that and make it a smaller group of managers or maybe just executives, you would have to go into security and remove the organization owner duty role from the line managers. That's the only way to make sure that you're restricting who gets that, because like I said, by default, all your line managers are going to be organization owners. So how does the organization owner add an organization goal? It's not hard. They're going to log into the system, and this is kind of what they would see. They would click on the My Organization Goals tab, and then they would click the Add Goal button. And that's where you're going to add details about your goal, measurements, or any tasks you want to have. I'll show you that when I demo it. So in my BTRG example, Janet, as the HCM organization owner, maybe she adds an organization goal to increase webinar attendance or something like that by 10%. It's then going to be available to her organization once she publishes it. So that's important to remember. You have to go in and click this publish link to make sure you're able to assign it and align it with other goals. If you don't do that, then no one's going to see it or nothing's going to happen. So you have to add the goal, then publish the goal for it to be used. So on the My Team Goals tab, managers can also add goals to specific direct reports. All you would do again, click the Add Goal button and decide which direct report you want to assign a goal to. Since Janet's actually my manager, she could theoretically log in, assign a goal to me called Deliver a Webinar. And then we could go in and track the progress. The worker could go in and see that she assigned the goal to me, and I could mark it as completed once it's done. Depending on how you configure the system, it might need to be approved, but it's pretty simple to use and very user-friendly. So there's a few more additional actions that managers can take when it comes to goals. The workers actually could have these same abilities, but it depends again, like how you configure the system, if you want them allow them to do so or not. First off, you have copying a goal. That's really helpful if you're creating similar goals. It copies the details, so then you don't have to re-enter them a million times. You can move a goal, and that's great if you need to change the goal plan or review period that a goal is associated with. Extending a goal, that's, say a worker hasn't finished a goal yet and you want them to continue working through it through another goal plan, you would select that option and it would keep the goal in the goal plan it's in and extend it through another goal plan. Aligning goals, that's great when you want to align your individual worker goals to team goals or organization goals, so you feel like you're helping and they all kind of work together. And then finally, you have canceling or delete a goal. That's pretty self-explanatory. The only difference between those two is if you cancel the goal, it's actually going to still be in the goal plan. If you delete the goal, it's going to be completely removed. Canceling it will still keep it there for tracking purposes. So your workers also have the ability to log into HCM Cloud and track the goals, like I said before, the ones that have been assigned to them. If you allow them to do so, they can add their own goals. At BTRG, we had it set up so that maybe they needed approval for the goal. So if I added a goal, Janet would have to go and approve it before it's kind of added to my plan. It would be pending until it is approved. So that's kind of helpful because the manager is then aware when I add the goal, and then it ensures that it really aligns with their overall plan for me. So now that I've talked about goals to death, let's actually jump in the system and see how it works in action. Here we go. So I'm going to log into the system as Curtis Feedy, and he is an HR specialist. So you'll see how the HR specialist screen looks. If you notice here, he has the My Workforce area, and that's only available for HR specialists. When I log in as managers or workers, they're not going to have that. I'm going to click on Goals under My Workforce. So first we're going to manage goal plans. So for the HR specialist to manage the goal plans, they have to click on the taskbar on the side, that little paper looking icon. You would click Manage Goal Plans. Pretty simple there. Once you click on that, this is the screen you're going to see. To see any existing plans, you would have to click Search to see those, and those would populate. So there's all the existing goal plans. But I'm going to create a new one for a manager called Simon Watts. So the HR specialist would go in, create a goal plan. I'm going to call it Simon Watts Team 2017. You can add a status. You want to make sure it's active so it's used. The description you can add. Clicking a review period will make sure that it's to the time period you want to select. You can allow updates to goals by either the HR specialist, manager, or worker, all three or just two of those. You also want to make sure you include it in the performance document if you'd like, and we're going to click annual evaluation in this example. So if you click next, now this is the organization assignment tab that I was talking about before. So if I want to add this to Simon Watts, I'm going to have to search and select him here. So all you would do is enter his name and click search or click enter, whatever you prefer. And then once he comes up, you're going to click apply. So see, he's the department head of Sales UK. So we're going to click apply and then done. And we've now assigned that to him. If you click next, there's also a worker assignment tab, and this allows you to add additional workers or an additional eligibility profile if there's additional people you want to have this goal plan in specifically. In most cases, you're going to have it only be to the organization owner, though. There's a review tab to just make sure everything looks good. You scroll back up, we got to make sure we save because it's very important in HCM Cloud to always save first and then submit. So once we click submit, that's actually going to kick off a process. So the goal scheduled process is going to kick off once we click submit. And once that is done, so you have to wait till this goes to success before Simon Watts will be able to see it. So if you go to the monitor process button, you click on that, then you'll see there it is, the first manage goal scheduled process. You can click the ready status and see what the status is. Oh, okay, now it's ran successfully, so we're good to go. It should be in Simon Watts' area. So let's log in as him and make sure we can see it. So I'm going to sign out as Curtis and sign back in as Simon Watts. Okay, so you'll notice Simon Watts' screen looks a little different. He doesn't have My Workforce. He's not an HR specialist. He's just a manager. So that's why he has the My Team area here. So he's going to click My Team and then Goals. On the left-hand side, you'll see there's 3 separate tabs. So we have the My Goals tab, the My Team Goals tab, and then the My Organization Goals tab. We're going to click on the My Organization Goals. And notice he now has 2 goal plans. There's the one we just created, Simon Watts Team 2017. And here's where we can add an organization goal. So now that we selected the goal plan, we can add a goal here. So like I said before, all you have to do, click the button and add the details. So since he's the leader of the sales team, let's say increase sales by 20%. Okay, and then all you would do is select a start date. If you have a target completion date in mind, you can enter that as well. It's always going to default to the review period. So in this case, let's say we want to check back maybe in August to see what the status is. So let's hope by then we can increase our sales by 20%. I know there's a category called sales. You can categorize your goal. So there's one of that, and then you can create a completion percentage if you want. If you select in progress, it's going to default to 25% done. We also have a priority of medium. You can create a description, so we're going to say increase sales generated by 20%. There's additional fields below that you can put the success criteria in, and you can also, if you scroll down, there's comments that you can put. And there's also a section for attachments or related links if you want to add those. So on the left-hand side, we're going to click on measurements to add a measurement to this goal. So if you click the plus sign, you'll get to add a measurement. So we're going to say a percent because I said I want to increase by 20% here. So we're going to use the unit of measure of percent and a target value of 20. And then later when you update the goal, when you actually complete it, you can put in what the actual value was. So that's all the required information here. So we're going to save that. Now you can also click tasks if you want to add specific tasks to this as well to kind of keep the progress made throughout the year. So maybe we want to find 10 prospective clients in the next kind of month or 2. So let's make this a research type goal. Priority is going to be high because we really want to get this done. And we'll say it's in progress. The start date's going to default. The target completion date, let's make it in February maybe so we can check back and see if we completed it. Let's make it February 28th. You can also add related links or comments here as well. So if we save and close, we should see the goal show up. So there it is. Good. Notice the priority is medium and it says it's not published. If you click back into the goal, you can always update this and edit it later on. Remember, like I said earlier though, if you do not publish the goal, no one's going to be able to use it, see it, or do anything with it or assign it to your direct reports. So because that says no, we want to click on that and click the publish button. And there we go, the goal was published, so that's great. Now if you click on the orange arrow to the right, those are those additional actions, some of them that I was talking about. You can move the goal. We're going to assign the goal to his to his direct reports. We're going to also allow the workers to update the key attributes as well. So if you just click on direct reports and click the assign button, that's going to kick off a process again. So they're going to have to monitor that process if you'd like. So they're not going to be able to see, the workers aren't going to be able to see this goal until that process is completed. So let's actually log in and show you. Let's show you the My Team Goals page too, so you can see all of his direct reports and their goals that he can manage. He also can look at his own goals under the My Goals page. So it's very easy and user-friendly on the right-hand side to jump between his own goals and his team's goals. Finally, we're going to log in as just a regular worker to see what they would see. So we're going to log in as Lucy Harris. So the screen looks a little bit different. She doesn't have my workforce or my team. She only has the About Me goals section. And that's because she has no direct reports and she's not an HR specialist. So you see here she has 2 goals in there already. We allow her to add goals, how we configured the system. If she wanted to update these goals, she could click on one of those. So if she clicked add goal, you see here she can enter the same kind of information. The one difference is she can mark it as private if she doesn't want her manager to see a goal. Say it's some personal goal she has that she just wants to work on her own time. And again, we configured the system so she does have the ability to do those additional actions, but with approval. So once she does those actions, the manager would get a notification to approve that. If she deleted or moved a goal, that we would want the manager to make sure that that's what she'd want. Okay, so that was just a quick little goal management demo. So now that we've kind of seen a little bit of goal management, now let's talk about how it connects with performance management. Goals are ongoing and they're tied to performance evaluations at certain times throughout the year, depending on how you want that. If you want it quarterly, annually, 2 times a year, it depends. So this approach kind of really is great because you can have continuous conversation about the progress being made. And that's something I think that employees really appreciate. So depending on how you configure the system, goals can be integrated with performance in a few different ways. You can add a goal sections directly to your performance template, or you can also have workers and managers adding goals directly to a performance document. So it's up to you how you want to do that. We recommend that you have it in the performance document, or I mean the performance template, I'm sorry, just because it's easiest that way, that it's pretty automatic. This chart just shows you a really great picture of how goals and performance come together. If you notice down here, we have development goals as well. Development goals are not tied to performance documents. Those are more about career advancement and succession planning. So those are separate from the performance goals. So Oracle Performance Management completely automates your organization's evaluation process. I know we used it here for our annual evaluation this past year, and our employees really thought it was great. It was super easy to use, and they felt like they could see how the progress was being made. Like goal management, your executives will still have insight into the status of the performance evaluation and the overall results. It's a template-based system, so that's great because it's very flexible to meet your needs, but it's also easy to set up and easy to maintain. You also have the ability to gather additional feedback, which is great, from other participants other than the worker and manager. So this could be a peer, this could be a project manager, depending on how your organization wants to do it. So there are 11 basic steps for setting up performance management in HCM Cloud. I know that kind of sounds like a lot, but really it's not that bad at all. And really what we're doing is we're setting up all the information that you need to set up a performance template. So in these next 2 slides, I'll briefly go over what each step is, but I mean, due to time, we're not going to be able to get into all of these into super detail, so I'll try to get to as much as I can. But if you have any questions about something I didn't get to, again, put them in the question box or email us after and we'll be sure to give you the information you need. So step one, what you're going to do is manage the performance roles. And what that means is you're going to create the participants for the performance process. So that would be your worker, your manager. Like I said, at BTRG, we used a peer as well. It depends on what you would like to see. I think of that as the who of the performance evaluation. Then step two, you're going to manage the eligibility profiles. And then there, what you're doing is deciding who gets what evaluation. So based on job criteria or whatever you want it to be based on, you can decide who gets what evaluation. Then step three, you're going to manage the process flow definitions. So that's basically deciding which tasks are going to be part of your performance evaluation and what order those are going to be done in. Step four, manage sections. For the process flow, you're going to decide which sections you want to include, and then you're also going to include what areas the worker will be rated on. Step five, manage performance document types. So depending on how your company wants to do it, you decide how many types of evaluations your company has. So it might be quarterly, it might be annually. Like I said, depends on what you need. 6, 7, and 8 are all related to questionnaires. So if I go to the next slide, you notice it's create questions, manage questionnaire templates, manage questionnaires. So what the questionnaire is how you get additional feedback from people other than the worker and manager. So those peers and project managers that I talked about before, what you would do is create a questionnaire for them to answer so you get additional feedback. And that's really great because you can customize and add any kind of questions, multiple choice. It's kind of like a little mini survey that they take about the employee's performance. Then step 9, manage performance templates. This is where you actually bring all of these other sections that you've done, steps 1 through 8. You kind of bring them together and put them in one spot. So that's the performance template. That's kind of your meat and potatoes of this whole thing. Step 10 is where you manage the target ratings distribution. That's where you compare the desired and the actual ratings distributions depending on how your company wants to look at it. Step 11, final step, you want to run the batch process for eligibility. So when you run the batch process, that's going to assign the performance evaluations based on that criteria that you set up. So if you want to have one, like at BTRG, we had one set of criteria for our HCM consultants, we had one for finance, so they would be assigned the correct template based on that. So here are the 4 questions I like to tell clients to ask themselves when they're considering using performance management. So question number 1, how many performance templates need to be set up? Question 2, how many types of evaluations do you need? Like I said before, do you do evaluations on a quarterly basis? Do you do them on an annual basis? Do you have a lot of projects, so you want to have a project template as well? It's good to decide that, the type of evaluations, because the document types need to be set up. Do you have variations in evaluations across your organization? So what that means is, do you have different set of criteria for different departments? Are the HCM consultants and the technical consultants, are we judged differently? Do you want to have different areas for that? You got to make sure you know the differences there so you can make those in the template. And finally, what notifications or approvals are needed? Do you want a multiple level approval system? Do you want notifications to go out during every step or just at the end? It's up to you how you want to do that. Okay, so the first step for setting up performance management is creating the roles for the participants in the process. And this would include the worker, the manager, and any other additional participants. Like I said, peers or project managers, those are some of the common ones we see. And you need to create that role and make sure that it's available for performance documents. If you don't do that, then it won't show up on the performance documents and they won't get assigned the correct areas. You also, if it's if it's one of those other additional participants, you need to associate a questionnaire to that role. If you don't associate the questionnaire, then they're not going to get anything and they're not going to be able to help you out. So here's BTRG's example. Like I said before, we use this internally for our performance management evaluations. So in our example, we use 3 different roles for the annual evaluation. We had the manager, the peer, and the worker. So notice the role type needs to match up as well. So when you're creating a manager, you want to make sure it has a manager role type. When you're creating a peer, it needs to have a participant. So anyone other than the worker and manager is going to be a participant. And finally, the worker needs to have the worker role type. You have to make sure that the status is active and it's in use. The from and to date, if you notice, they're very spread out. That's just because we want to use these additionally in the future. We want to keep using these over and over. So if you make those dates pretty spread out, then they'll always be available to use for you. So after you add the performance roles, the next step that you need to do is decide on the process flow. So this is what tasks you want to include in the evaluation and what order they're going to be done in. So here's the different options that you have when doing this. So set goals. That's where you decide which goals you want to include in the performance document, if any. Worker self-evaluation is pretty self-explanatory. That's where the worker rates themselves on their performance. Manager evaluation, that's where the manager evaluates the worker's performance. Then you have your manage participant feedback, and that's where you get input from people other than the worker and the manager. First approval, second approval, it depends how many layers of approval you want. You don't need to have an approval if you don't want as well. Share the performance document. That's a good step to include because the worker would then acknowledge the performance document and kind of sign off on it. Confirm a review meeting was held, so you could have a task to make sure that the worker and the manager meet and go over everything that was discussed in their ratings. Then finally, provide final feedback. You can let the worker and the manager both provide kind of end feedback afterwards about how it went. And then I think it's great that you can actually set next period goals at the end of the performance document. So that is really helpful because it kind of puts your goals at the forefront and sets your employee up for success in their next performance evaluation. So if we go to the next slide. So here's just an example for how the screen looks when you're setting up the performance flow. This is actually very similar to what BTRG did. So in the setup, you're going to create a name, a description if you'd like, again, make sure it's active. And then all of those tasks that I had on the slide before, those are all going to be different options in this taskbar. So if you see, I have setting goals here. So we decided to start our performance evaluation with setting goals. We let the manager set goals, we let the worker set goals, but we really only wanted the manager to be able to complete the task. So those are all up to you. You have to have one or the other, complete the task, but if you only want the manager to set the goals, that's fine too. We also decided to include worker self-evaluation and manager evaluation, which is pretty standard. And we also, the last one is evaluation tasks can be performed concurrently. So all that means is that the worker and the manager can work on this at the same time. They can do their evaluations in sync so that it's on their own schedule. Like the worker doesn't have to wait for the manager doesn't have to wait for the worker. Okay, and then what you would do next is click the task names. So if you click task names, you're then going to see this. So once I click that I wanted to use set goals, it will show up on this screen. Once I click that I wanted to use worker self-evaluation, it would show up on this screen. If you didn't select those, they're not going to show up here because you didn't indicate that you wanted to use them. You can kind of pick and choose which options you want to enable there. So that's really great. It shows you exactly how this flow would look. So as you can see, we decided to start by setting goals. We went into the worker self-evaluation, we did the manager evaluation, and we included a lot more steps here. Manage participant feedback, the first approval, share performance document, and so on. The other thing you can look at here is the sequence. So the sequence shows you what order these things are done, and you could always update this as well. And then update the task names for the manager or the worker role. So you can change what they see. If you don't think it makes sense, you can add a different customized thing here. It's very easy to change. They're pretty standard though, so if you just want to leave them, that's fine too. You can just leave them as is. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So once you have that flow set up, you then have to add section content for the tasks that require one. So here are the different section types. So profile content, that's where you rate workers' competencies. So say one of my, as a consultant, one of my competencies is presenting. You would be able to rate me on a scale depending on what rating model you're using. And again, it goes by job profile, so it depends on what you want them to be rated on. Goals, you could rate the worker goals, how much progress they made, did they complete their goals. Questionnaires, that's where you provide feedback from people other than the worker and manager. So if you want to set up a questionnaire, you have to set up a section type for questionnaire. Overall summary, that's where you give an overall rating for the worker. And it also lets everyone have final kind of overall comments about the performance. And again, there's worker final feedback and manager final feedback. That just, again, lets them have their kind of last word when it comes to the performance evaluation to make sure everything's in there that they need. So this is a really important chart when it comes to setting up sections. Certain tasks in the process flow require sections. So you have to make sure you have everything you need. So in this example, so say I decided to use set goals. Because I decided to put set goals in the process flow, I need to have at least one of these two, profile content or goals, as a section. So I need to create one of these to use set goals. If you don't, it's not going to work. And that's very important to remember because, again, you don't want to set up or use a task if you don't have the sections. Again, they work together. You have to have both. Another example, worker provides final feedback. If you included that in the process flow, you need to include a section, worker final feedback. It's pretty self-explanatory, this chart. The managed participant feedback, notice that you need to have the questionnaire or one of these other things. 90% of the time it's going to be the questionnaire there. So just remember this, it's pretty critical when you're setting up your template. I always go back to it to make sure I have each one of the sections for each of the tasks that I used. So after you create your sections, you then have to create performance document types. And this step is pretty simple. It's similar to the role step. All you're doing is really categorizing the types of performance evaluation your company needs. So at BTRG, we have two types of performance documents. We have one for annual evaluation, and then we have one for project evaluation. Again, that's just how we use it this year. If we wanted, we could add another one for quarterly next year. It's all up to how your company wants to do it. So this is how the screen would look. You would just have to enter the name of the type, give it a description, the from date and to date. We usually make these pretty far off so you can continuously use them. And then this little icon down here, worker can select manager when creating document. That's helpful when you're doing project evaluations because say it's not going to be your direct manager that's going to be doing it and you want to use your project manager, you would have to select this option so the worker can indicate who is the one that should be doing it. All right, so you've created the performance roles, you've done the process flow, you've done the sections, and you made document types. Now the performance template is where all these kind of come together into one combined area. Everything you've created up till now is where it's going to be housed in this performance template. So if you notice, these are all the things you need to include. Document types, like we did, eligibility profiles, like I talked about before, that's just deciding which criteria you're going to set up for this specific template, who you want to get this template. Participation roles, those are the ones we created, worker, manager, peer, project manager, matrix manager, etc. How the process flow is going to work. any calculation rules or options that you want to include. Structure is just content, and those are the sections. So sections goes under structure. Content is any additional content that you want to add, like specific goals or specific competencies you want them to be rated on. And then finally, you have to select the review period that you want this to occur in. And you select dates for the different tasks. So for our annual evaluation, we created a performance template called Consultant Performance. So that's why it's named Consultant Performance. You can enter any comments you would like, the from date, the to date, make sure the status is active, and then you select the document type. So like I talked about before, I would go into these different tabs and select everything we've created up till now. I would select the roles of worker, manager, and peer, make sure those are added. I'd add the process flow to the process tab. I'd add the sections to the structure tab. If I wanted to add any additional content, I could do that there. Make sure it's the right review period, and select any dates I need, and then look at the summary and make sure everything looks how I want it to. So this is just where everything comes together. It's probably the most important step, but the thing is, this isn't going to work correctly unless you've done every other step first. So you can't create a template until you've set up everything else. It's very important. So how does the performance evaluation look to the end user? The worker manager would go into the performance area of HCM Cloud, so they log in like I did in the earlier demo, and they'd go into either the My Team, or they would go into About Me, and they would click on Performance, and they would see the template that's been assigned to them based on the criteria we decided. So then there, they'll be guided through the process and given due dates. So if you see here, this is what a worker would see. They've been assigned the 2016 annual evaluation. Their next task to do is the worker self-evaluation. So all they would have to do is click begin, and that would let them start the process and show them exactly what they need to do. It's very user-friendly, very easy to use. Not much explanation is necessary. So as you see here, they need to do their self-evaluation, so we're going to pretend like we click on that. So when they click on that self-evaluation, they're going to be brought directly to an evaluation page. This is just an example of kind of how they would rate themselves on the different sections. So if you had a competency section, and these are the different competencies they would be rated on, this is what they'd see. So for building relationships, there's going to be a target and a worker rating. You don't need to use target ratings, but they're helpful. So based on the job profile, this person should have at least a 3 for building relationships. That gives the worker a little bit of indication where they need to be. Not necessarily where they have to click, but I mean, they should probably be in this general area. If they're better than that, then they can click higher. This pencil icon lets them add any comments, and then once a comment's added, this will highlight. And all they would do is, again, go through all these and rate themselves. I should also mention you can configure it. So in this example, we use stars, but you don't have to use stars. There's different kind of evaluations. You could have a drop down with numbers. You could have there's a ton of different options. So depending, this is pretty visual, so it's nice. You could just click the star, but to you how you want to use that. You can also require comments if you'd like. A lot of places don't. You can have them be able to add additional competencies if you'd like. Depends on what you want. Okay, so now that we've gone all through that, let's now go into the system and see how you set up some of this stuff. So I'm going to log in as Curtis Feedy again. If you remember, he is our HR specialist. So the HR specialist role allows you to set up the performance-related tasks. So I'm going to click on his name in the corner and click on Setup and Maintenance under the Settings and Actions. So this is where you're going to do all of your setup. So let's first do the performance roles. So I'm going to search for a performance role. It's very easy to search and find tasks. So there it is, Manage Performance Roles. Click on that. And here you're brought to the page. If you click search, like I said before, unless you click search, you're not going to see anything. But here we click search and now we can see all the roles that have already been created. So there's a bunch of them. There's already a manager, there's already a worker. Let's create a peer though, something different. So I'm going to click the plus sign, give it a name. So I'm going to call it peer. The description, we're going to call it coworker for performance evaluation. And then you would select a from and to date. We're going to create a to date. Actually, let's create it quite a bit in the future just because we want to continue to use this as much as possible. So we're going to use 2050. Then the status has to, and if you want them to be able to see the worker and manager evaluations when they're doing this, you would click that box, but we don't want to do that, so we're going to click save and close. So if I click search again, the peer is going to show up. So if you click on, we're going to actually click on the manager and show you one difference. If you notice, the role type is manager here. Manager and worker are automatically in the system, so you don't have to worry about that, but any additional participants you're going to have to add. So after you do the performance role, we're going to do the process flow. So if you click on Manage Performance Process Flows, again, click Search, and you'll see all the ones that have already been created, but we're going to show you, I think first let's look at one that's already been created and click the Edit button, so that little pencil. So this one is someone created annual evaluation with a description. And like I showed you before, all you're doing is selecting different options. So let's cancel this and actually create a new one so you could see how this works. We're going to click the plus button. Let's call this annual performance evaluation. Then you could create a description and a from and to date if you would like. We want to use this for this year. So we're going to go to December and click December 31st and change the from date to the 1st of January. So it's going to be an annual. Make sure it's active, and then down here, like I showed you before, this is where you just click the options that you want to include. So if I want to set goals, I would click that. We're going to have the manager to be able to set goals, the worker can set goals. We're going to include the worker self-evaluation task. So if I try to go to task names, it's going to give me an error. So I need to make sure someone completes the setting goals task. So I'm going to have the manager do that. Now I should be able to go into the task names. And if you see here, there's set goals, there's worker self-evaluation. So if we go back to the tasks, as we keep selecting the different sections, those are going to show up in the task name. So let's add the manager evaluation, and we're going to let them do them at the same time. We also want to have an approval task, so we're only going to do one level of approval. And then we're going to do the document sharing task and have the worker acknowledge the document. And I think that's good. So let's go to the task names. So like I showed you before, those are all going to show up there. And then the sequence number is going to show you the order. And then you can change the task name if you'd like for what the manager sees and what the worker sees. So let's edit the task name for the shared performance document and just call it maybe acknowledge performance document for the worker since they need to acknowledge it. Super simple to update. So if you click save and close, we're going to save first and then save and close. It'll bring you back to the process flow screen. So let's click done. So we created the process flow. So next, let's actually create some document types. I know when I went over it, we did sections first. It really doesn't matter. It's just best practice to do the sections right after so they're fresh in your memory. But let's just do the document types since those are super easy to do. If you press search again, we're going to see all of the different document types that people have created. If you want to create a new one, you click the plus button. We're going to call this one project evaluation. So we want to use a project evaluation throughout the year, so we need a document type called that. Again, I'm going to have a to date pretty far in advance because I want to continuously use this. So we're going to do 2050 again and select January 28th. Make sure that the status is active. This last part, worker can select manager when creating document. Like I said before, this is helpful for project evaluations because your main manager isn't going to be the one on your project. You want to be able to select someone else. That's where you designate that here. So let's save and close. Changes were saved. And done. So we created the document types. Okay, so now let's look at the different sections. So manage performance template sections. Click on that. Again, you're not going to see anything until you hit search. Maybe competencies as an example. All of these have been created in advance. So if we click on competencies, we can see someone's created the section for competencies, given it a description, added a to and from date, and made sure it was active. Middle section processing part, where it says profile content's important. And then we also need to select a rating model. So for profile content and competencies, you want to select a proficiency rating model. And you want to rate that section. We want to be able to give a number or a rating. And here are just some more. There's a lot of different options. We don't have time to get into all of them, but there's a ton of options when it comes to your sections and how you want to rate them, weight them, all sorts of different options there you have. And you would save and close. If you want to create a new section, you would click the plus button. If you want to edit one that's existing, you would hit the pencil button. So that's just a short demo. Like I said before, what you would do now is everything you've already created, you would go into a template and set that up. Very basic, very easy to use. Okay, so that was just a very basic introduction to setting up goal management, performance management. There's a lot more functionality, there's a lot more to talk about, but that's as much as we could get to today. I know, Janet, you wanted to give some comments at the end.
Sure. Thanks, Courtney. It's a great demo that you did today. I appreciate it. As a manager at BTRG, it's definitely an easy system for us to use. It really does help us, give feedback to our direct reports throughout the year. Again, Courtney did get, a goal to actually do a webinar, and I think she's done a great job. So that goal, I'll be sure to mark as completed and get a high score on. The one thing I've noticed, and you may or may not be PeopleSoft customers from the past, but HCM Cloud performance and goals looks very similar to PeopleSoft's performance and goals. So it's a nice crossover. It's the setup is very similar. So if you have been doing it in PeopleSoft before, you'll be very familiar with it in HCM Cloud. So just wanted to mention that here at the end. If there were any questions, definitely please send us an email with questions or put them in the chat box at the bottom. Otherwise, thank you, Courtney. I appreciate it, and hope you guys enjoyed the webinar today.
Thank you, everyone.